What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In each episode, we get the distinct pleasure to talk to brothers and sisters who are doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And they share their God stories, the ways in which God has been at work in their lives and the ways in which God has been at work through their work. And today is no different. I have my sister, our sister, Dee Brown. What's going on, sis?
Lawrence, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited. I don't even think you understand. I am super excited.
Yeah. Oh, you and I were talking offline. I just feel like we are kindred spirits now from a diaspora perspective. That's clearly not actually too much of a stretch to think that we ain't related in some sense.
There are way too many connections. Seriously, we got to have a whole little dialogue. I need to know where your family is from. I need to know the whole line.
Exactly. But I was telling her, that we're children of those who have design eyes and gifts. From the carpenter, the great carpenter, the great creator of the universe, was one who built. And so for me, the son of an architect, to one is the daughter of an architect, interior designer, design from mom's hand. That was my introduction to Dee. But for many of people who know beyond the Houston area, whether you were when she was in her jaunt in New York, Dallas, LA, have come to know you initially through your journalism, through your gift, your on air, your production. You were an Emmy-nominated producer. This is not a game. But then you've made pivots in ways that have just been tremendous. And so clearly, I can't do it very well, right? Meaning I have all the stats, I know all the stuff, Oprah ambassador, all my home goods people and all that. But I'm going to get out the way and ask the question, who is Dee Brown?
Dee Brown, I actually did an introduction very similar to this on one of my videos that I did earlier this year. And one of the first things that I immediately start off with is that Dee Brown is a believer of Christ, first and foremost. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a servant, I'm a daughter, and I'm a friend. And those are all roles that I don't take lightly. And just being able to have them and to make that a part of my living purpose has been nothing short of amazing. It's not easy, but it's a part of who I am and even how I give and serve to others. So it works.
What's interesting is that you and I talked a little bit about, because there's obviously there's so many. There's one identity that we obviously hold on to, that is our security, but there are so many different hats you've worn throughout your life. And one of the things we talked about was track and field and the like. But I just want to get my brain is thinking of Memphis, Tennessee, and the home life. And what was that dynamic? Because it's easy to look back now and say, did you know early, could you imagine in your wildest dreams that this would be your life today? Are there kind of hints of, wow, I loved watching and seeing what my dad did and what my mom did and all that? Talk to me about your childhood and the dynamic in the home and cultivating kind of your interests and likes and all that good stuff.
Memphis, growing up there, Memphis is one of the greatest cities on the planet.
Shout out.
Despite the bad rap that it gets, right? Represent North Memphis to be exact.
Okay.
But listen, look, you got to represent your hood. But no, Memphis is one of the greatest cities. There are so many rich things about the city, the history, the people that have come through there. It's has so much music history. But for me, growing up in Memphis, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That was
we got it. We got it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Memphis, growing up in Memphis, honestly, it was a delight. I grew up in a household. My father, yes, he was an architect, but he's a military guy. And my mother grew up, several siblings. She had a sense of structure that I think matched with my dad's, that allowed them to raise me to be intentional about order, about structure, and just kind of having my stuff tight. Growing up in Memphis, I would have to say I've built some of the most amazing relationships. It was where honestly, I got my start in journalism. So I never really had necessarily an attachment to being an architect or being a designer. I had no interest. Earlier on, I always wanted to go into the medical field. And by the time I got to middle school, I was dead set on going to college to be a physical therapist. And I connected with physical therapy being an athlete. So I was like, well, why not use my talent for the love of people, mix it with the medical field, and help athletes and people that may not be athletic, that may have had a surgery or another type of injury for whatever reason, rehabilitate them and get them back on their feet. And so, as much as I like science, I'm not sure I was ready for the level of science that you have to go through in college to even get to that point of, getting your doctoral degree in that lane. But, it's where, University of Memphis played a huge part in introducing me to journalism. I was a part of like a citywide high school newspaper. So it was all the high schools in the city of Memphis, and it was one paper. And I was actually the sports writer. And I enjoyed it so much. And, I ended up finding out that I was much better at writing than what I really thought that I was. My English teacher convinced me to enter a writing contest. And the short of it, I did it for extra points and I did better. And I actually ended up placing in the region. I think I was like third. It was like for a trip to England. But it showed me that I was good at something more than just track. And the wonderful thing about my parents, whatever I was interested in, they were intentional about fostering it. So, like, I played the piano for many years, and a lot of people don't know that. They were intentional about getting me with the right teacher. When I ran track, it was the same thing. And so I knew that interior design, I couldn't. The thing is that my mind couldn't wrap around, and this is during the time of America Online, AOL, right? So I couldn't wrap my head around, digital storytellers or influencers, or how I could combine the beautiful world of architecture and design with journalism. Like, that was just foreign. All I could see was sports reporting, news reporting, or getting into lifestyle and entertainment. And I wanted to go the sports route. So that was kind of what my experience was, and being in a position with my parents where I got a lot of exposure. And I'm not just talking, like, I'm talking traveling at a young age, getting exposed to New York. I'm 11 years old. I'm in New York City. I'm going to DC, going to these different places and realizing that these people are so different from what I'm used to living around. What is it about them that they're exposed to that makes them seemingly so different? And they really weren't different. It was just exposure in the environment and the culture and all these other different things. And I wanted a piece of that. And thankfully, I had parents that, I traveled with track. It wasn't in my purpose for me to go professional, but track exposed me so much to the right environments and to the right people, and allowed me to get the money that I needed, that brought me to Houston to go to college and to further explore journalism so that I could have that opportunity. So it opened the door to the opportunities that were awaiting for me that were part of my purpose. So
this, I'm looking, I'm just imagining wide open. And so it may seem like I'm even sometimes skipping forward when I sometimes see the spaces, right? And I think all these things are always consistent to the outside eye, but to you, it's like, this is just what it is, right? It's just like these open spaces, there's kind of like recessed lighting, muted colors, things like that. But I see that it almost captures the essence. It connotes even just the type of home. It was exploration. It was open. Oh, you want to do that? Let's explore. Let's go. Let's travel. Let's this. And so I'm holding this in one hand, but then there's another part of me now, which is just like, what was your environment and what was the genesis of your relationship and love story with God? Right? Was it similar? Was it not? Kind of walk us through kind of what was your love story? Was it later on in life?
You know what? So I grew up at a mega church. And it was a mega church that lacked a level of diversity where I didn't feel connected. And I feel like the connection was much bigger than the diversity issue. Obviously, that disconnection was really God. And in my mind, growing up, I knew all of the godly things to do to be in good graces, right? You know, to serve, to attend church, to show up on time, to be respectful, but to be mindful, um, to present yourself as a young lady. You know, don't sleep around, don't drink, don't do da da da. You know, I knew all of the things to do, but I never really understood God. And the environment that I was in, I had parents that demonstrated, you know, a love for God. So I knew what to pray for, but I lacked understanding of why I was praying that prayer. So I didn't really have an understanding of what the gospel is, the living gospel. I knew what to do, but I did not truly understand the gospel. And I also attended a church, and this is not a knock on them because it's honestly very common, I think, especially if you're an 80s or 90s kid. It wasn't a church that was intentional about sharing the gospel before the invitation. So when the invitation happened, it was about coming forward if you wanted to be baptized, if you needed to join a church, or if you wanted to establish a relationship with Christ, right? So there was still that disconnection. Like I knew that I was a sinner, a filthy, dirty sinner, and Jesus Christ, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, he died on the cross for my sins. Okay, so he died on the cross for my sins because I'm a sinner. That still doesn't really explain a whole lot with the gospel, right? So you're telling this to a kid. So I'm just walking around. I'm a sinner. I need Jesus. And I'm praying to him every night. Jesus, come into my heart. That was my understanding. And a small yet impactful disconnect, right? And so throughout my childhood, I did godly things, if that makes sense. And I professed a relationship with God, but I lacked understanding of believing the gospel, articulating the gospel, right? Really understanding the gospel, right? I couldn't articulate it. I just knew I believed in God. You better not question my Jesus, okay? You know, like that was old Southern Baptist. And so to be candid, went to college and it continued, right? So I did all of the right things. And it made sense to me, you know, and I'm in ministry and I'm worshiping and, you know, I'm going here and I'm going there and I'm encouraging my, you know, my crew. Like, you know, we used to all go to church together. We had Bible study at my house, you know, and yet it was still that disconnect about a true and clear understanding about the gospel. And I remember my husband and I got married, and the church that we were attending when we relocated back to Houston, and we were sitting in church one day, and for the first time out of all the churches that I had attended, I actually heard the gospel being articulated and explained, and what it really, really, like, why Christ died on the cross, what was really going on in them streets, right? And when I heard that, I just wept, and it just happened uncontrollably. And I was just like, all this time I've been doing all of these amazing things that I thought Christians are supposed to do, which I don't want to take away from that, but that's not what really connects you to the kingdom, right? The good behavior. Those are that doesn't really, that's not what it is. Let's just put it there. It's not really what it is. And so I cried, but then I said, geez, Louise, macaroni and cheese. That's what I say to my kids when I get real hype about something. I get frustrated. Because you don't want to
knew
cuss
that was
in
a
front of the
mom
kids,
bar.
right?
We knew that was a mom
I
bar
don't
all
want
the
to cuss.
way.
So I say, geez, Louise, macaroni and cheese. What in the world has the church been teaching me all these years? I said, it is a complete disservice during invitation to not speak beyond Christ died on the cross for your sins, and if you want a new life in the Lord, come forward. They don't tell you jack diddly squat, okay? Like, why am I really coming forward? Other than the fact that I feel the pressure of the environment, the children that I'm in Sunday school with, the people that I'm around, and it's just, it was almost like Christianity was a behavior, right? It was a behavior, and it became a lifestyle, if that makes sense. because a lifestyle is who you are, right? It became a lifestyle for me when I was 26. So that essentially, I hope that answers your question of growing up, what it was. And I jokingly tell people, I said, I was born in Memphis. I was raised in New York because New York brought the gutter out of me, right? It was a whole nother level of hustling.
Oh
Okay,
God.
let's just keep it real. But I became grown when I got married and relocated back to Houston because I started to see and understand God in a way that I had not. And it's not full of judgment, right? And a lot of times as Christians, that's what we do. You judge people because their behavior is different from what you're doing. What is your lifestyle? What's your lifestyle reflect? You know what I mean? What are your fruit? You got fruit flies or you got real fruit that's fresh and nice and green? You know what I mean? So and that's what it was. And so that was a pivotal moment in my walk with God. And I just said, God, that is tragic because there are so many people that go through the church for so many years and not really truly connecting and understanding the gospel.
Sis, this I appreciate. I appreciate how you took us on the journey of what that looked like because that was many ways it was my story, right? It was my story. It was I really don't know what I'm talking about. I don't really know why I didn't, and I felt this shame, right? Of I've invested in educating myself in everything but you, God. Like I've invested in my career and knowing about it, but I don't really know what I'm talking about. I don't know why this is important. I don't know this. And I do think for a generation beyond the first generation, if you're educated, it's just a new generation. There's just like people we got our degrees and we got our stuff and we're achieving. There's this internal shame, like I should know. And so I think that's going to free somebody up hearing that and hearing that story because I think it's so relatable because I think that is the reality of so many people. Some people who walk through it and navigate and some people who pushed away because that's all they saw it to be. And good behavior is not good news, right? As you articulate so beautifully. So now my brain is going to this what became anew because I think people could really relate to okay, if it's like, oh man, she knew Jesus and everybody her entire life, it's a different conversation versus okay, like the scales fell off. Something happened. It changed. So how did it change your view of just your work at that time as a journalist? What changed for you? How did your relationship to your work change? Was it just that you had a different joy? Was it a different responsibility? So talk us through how your view of work changed once that changed.
It changed. My heart towards work started to change. So I always, whatever I connected myself to, like track, I worked my butt off. I can remember holidays in high school when I should be home in the morning. I'm out practicing with the side coach to help me perfect that craft, right? I always worked my butt off with whatever I connected myself to, right? Nothing wrong with that. But the issue was the sacrifice that came with it that superseded my relationship with God and the identity component. So when it was time for me to wash my hands with track, I struggled. I struggled because it was all I had knew of myself to be. Dee, the girl that was good at track. And I wasn't ready to give up on that because of what I had given into it. So what I was giving to track, I wasn't giving to my relationship with God, but I didn't know, right? Because I'm still like joining ministries and doing the right things and having Bible studies and la 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 la. Ned Flanders, whatever from The Simpsons. I was just this whole, it's like so I was in this world and I was just like, what is happening? And, departing from something that means so much to me really shouldn't be this hard, should it? And it was that hard because it was who I connected myself to. And when I heard the gospel in its truth when I was 26, things shifted, and it was a nice little transition, but my priorities changed. I stopped wanting to be like, I was a workaholic, and I still have to kind of catch myself because I'm just a natural born, I love to work, but I was a workaholic. But I realized that I wasn't being a workaholic for the kingdom. I was being a workaholic for myself and my earthly success, right? And there's nothing wrong with contributing to that, right? But there was just something that was just so out of order, right? About that. So during this transition of me really hearing the gospel in its fullness and in its truth, I started making this shift about what prioritizing looks like for me. And when I heard the gospel, that was about 5 years before I had my first baby. So my husband was married. We were married almost 6 years before we had our first kid, explored, had fun, traveled, spending money, hanging out with friends. Like, it was a ball of fun. And I remember when I got pregnant, my husband was like, and mind you, I'm on this journey. I'm climbing back up the ladder. I'm trying to get my own show. I got these goals and these dreams. And my husband said, well, Dee, do you mind, because we don't have family here. He said, do you mind coming home for about 6 months max to be home with the baby? Because, typically what you do, you come home for 3 months and you send the baby to daycare at 12 weeks. And he wasn't ready because he was like, okay, we ain't got no grandma here, no granddad, no auntie, no uncle, no cousin, to help out. Could you compromise with doing that? And it's so crazy because I was like, let's go. And I ended up staying home a whole year. Now, that's not the standard for everyone. I am not the standard. Everybody's story looks different. Okay. But for our story, for my story, for our home story, I felt like God was calling me to come to a place to where, with prioritizing, life looked differently for me. So I started to position family in a place to where a few years before then, I would have been like, send that baby to daycare in 6 weeks. How about that?
How about that, right?
I'm like, I'm ready to get back to work. I'm on the grind. I got goals. I got to get here and I got to get there and da-da-da-da. And it was Christ, but then it was the season that I was in as a mother, as a wife and now becoming a mother. And that sandwich together just kind of started putting me in a place to where walking away was okay for me now. When I walked away from track, it was like a bad breakup, and I was hurt. I mean, like, I stopped even watching and following track. Like, that's how sad I was. Then I was just like, okay, you know what? I said, God calls me to mother. And if being a mother in this season means I got to come home for a year or 6 months or 2 years to serve my family as my husband provides, I am Gucci, as they say. I feel like I'm kind of hip hop. I was like, I am good. Listen. I try to stay current. I was cool with that, and I was at peace. So I came home, but guess what? I never missed a beat. So I came home for a year, and again, I'm not the standard, and everybody's story looks different. Lawrence, I came home for a year. And towards the end of that year, I knew it was time for our son to go to, we were going to be getting him in daycare. And I remember 2 months before he started daycare, I'm like, man, I said, my baby's birthday is in a month. We want him to go to school. I'm ready to go back to work, but where do I start? And I got a call for a job as a reporter. Hadn't worked in a year. Got a call. This job is open. And I was like, wow. Didn't know the person that was hiring, but knew someone that knew him, right? Lady didn't know me from a can of paint, met up with me at Starbucks. She was a senior executive producer at the time for Steve Harvey. We met up at Starbucks. This lady didn't know me from Adam. She picked up her phone. She called the hiring manager. She said, and these were her exact words. She said, you would be stupid not to hire this girl. And I got a job. And that cycle happened. So I worked that job, and I was in this space to where now the job, which was technically like a dream job, because I had been working up to that moment to get this reporter job, I was working too much. So here I am with a 1 year old. I'm working 60 hours a week, Lawrence. And it still wasn't enough. Still trying to be a mother, still trying to be a wife, still trying to pick up my son, come home, reinforce what he learned at school, get dinner on the table, wait for everyone to go to bed just so I can get back up at 11 o'clock and work till 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, you know what? I said, God has given me the gift of connecting with people and talking, and I'm doing it for a living. It is not in His will to compromise my family, my health, and my safety for a job. Utilizing a talent that He gave me is something off with that. I'm tired all the time. I don't even have enough time for him. I don't have enough time for my family, et cetera, et cetera. And I left. I put in my resignation, talked to my husband, and but get this, 10 days after I left, I got a phone call to work on a network show with HGTV. 10 days later. And on top of that, we had been trying to get pregnant and could not. I was stressed. I was tired. My husband said, D, look, I'm down for another kid, but not in this type of environment. I got pregnant right after I left that job with a healthy baby girl. Worked that network job. My last day working on that show for HGTV, and at this month, I think I was like, at this point, I was 6 months pregnant. The last day, my working day, I got a phone call about being an ambassador for Oprah magazine. That last day. And it was, what I realized is when you trust God and prioritize, everything falls into place. It's not always about what you get. Don't get it twisted, because we can get caught up in there. When blessings go up, praises go up, blessings come down.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this and I'm gonna get no, but I started to see that living for Him and making Him my main priority and making my identity in Him, it will fall into place. Not always by my doing and not always the way that I wanted to, but it happened. And I haven't missed a beat, and I'm grateful, but I realized that was the biggest change for me. To go back to your initial question, the biggest change for me was that my heart started to change about my priorities and making Him a priority and everything else falling into line.
Bam! This was Ginsu. Ginsu commute, I like literally like as she's going, I'm like, this was so masterful, but so this is so refreshing, because I just want to unpack a couple things. One of which is just trusting in okay, I know God's order, even how you've been endowed to appreciate order. I just don't think that He would have me do this and sacrifice this and put this on the altar of my family and this and that and lose. That's number one. Number two, this is something that so many people struggle with, brothers and sisters, and it's a unique struggle for sisters, particularly those who feel called to have a family, children. It's what I call, like, career, my mom used to talk about, like, the dissonance. She said, I remember early on, and I think you spoke to it. Remember, she was just like, I defined what me being a good wife and mother was going to be before I started ascending. Because I knew that once I started to do that, I would remix the game and change the definition because of my heart, right? Because it would be hard to ever say, I'm not being a good wife, I'm not being a good mother. It's hard for me to say that. So to guard against that, I'm going to define it in no clear, uncertain terms, right? And for me, it's not so much about, like, you're not saying this from Mount Olympus. You're saying this with such humility to say, just something wasn't right. I made the decision. It wasn't necessarily perfect, but look at how God's been faithful in this way, specifically for my family in that season, for what we needed. And this is the way it worked out. And so I think that's just encouragement for people who are in the crossroads of making that decision, whose bodies are breaking down. I had my sister Coach Jesse Thompson on and talking about sisters and fibroids and just miscarriage. And so
yes, I know Coach Jesse. Yes, I don't know her personally, but I'm familiar with her work.
Yeah, but we were just talking about, just like, weren't built for that. Our bodies are telling us that we are out of order. And not just the consumption, the stress, the cortisol, upregulating our bodies of our sisters in ways and again, it affects brothers, but I wanted to center what you're saying because I think that so many sisters going to raise their hands and be like, wow.
I know. And you know what? Let me tell you, I am about that. Let me get that bag life within godly reason. Okay. I am all
Be
about,
clear.
yeah,
Be clear.
I'm all about goals because I'm naturally an ambitious person. I'm very goal oriented. But you know what, Lawrence? I think like for me, especially during that season when I like left my job as a reporter slash co-host and getting the call from HGTV and then Oprah Magazine, and all, I realized that I had to step away from the way family, culture defines success. What does success look like for Dee Brown? And what I realized is that my success had to be tailored. And what I had been doing was defining it like, so, okay, you went to UT, right? When you go to college, typically, like with your advisor or, your dean or your department or whatever you decide to study in, they're giving you steps to get to where you want to be in your career field, right? So for me, it was like, okay, get more than a 3.0, get an internship your senior year, build the relationship, graduate. And then, of course, in television, they always tell you to go start in a smaller market. Start in somewhere like Timbuktu. Get the job, work your way up, travel around, land your feet in a larger market, make good money, do well, get married if you choose, all this stuff, right? And so they give you like this template. And I had been following that template model, which is jacked up, right? And it did not work for me, like period, point blank. And especially being in a situation to where honestly, I hit this point, Lawrence, to where I was like, I want to serve God where I am. How do I create success for me in television, which I adore because it's a God-given talent, with serving God being a main priority to where I don't have to sacrifice my family or decide like in a very detriment situation. Okay, do I stay here with my family during a flood or do I go to work? Like I personally, I don't judge anyone that makes that decision because, obviously we have amazing people out there that are doing it well. For me, I didn't want that. For me, I didn't feel like that's what I was called to do. And so I had to kind of, mess with the formula a little bit. I had to mix up the recipe and it allowed me to start getting creative. But you mentioned the word humility. Let me tell you, I've always felt like I was a relatively humble person. But when I hit those moments to where I had to make a decision to walk away, my humility really showed for what it was. When I had to move from New York because I decided that I wanted to be married instead of, man, I realized how humble I was not. I'll tell you that. Walking away from a job and worked your butt off, went to graduate school, graduated with a 3.9, and you shining in these streets and everybody's cheering you on, and then now you at home with a baby that's looking at you and you looking at them, and you got a headache with a breast milk stain on your shirt, right? And I'm like, this is not me. Why isn't it you? And what's the problem with it? And a lot of times things are just seasonal. When you make a decision, and that was the thing I had to realize for me, when I made the decision to come home, it wasn't a decision for the rest of my life. It was a decision for the now, for our household. Now I had to sacrifice, and I wasn't happy with that. I was ready to go back to work, get my shine on, get that microphone, let's get it popping. But being in agreement with my husband for the greater good of our household really made sense in the end. And exactly what we wanted out of that is exactly what we got. And if I had to do it over and over and over again, I would. It's hard work. I got a 2-year-old at home. And she starts school in June. She's been home with me since she started school. It's time for her to go.
She didn't get her job yet? She didn't get her job yet?
Look, it's time for her to go to college. How about that? She is beyond ready, okay? But the pandemic and some other things kind of threw a monkey wrench in that. But I just say all that to say, I trust God
Mm,
because God knows that I'm being faithful, not for the reward that He can give me, but for the greater good of our household.
mm,
Whether it's the children, whether it's for my husband, and I break down and cry. My husband and I talk because I got a lot of responsibility right now.
mm,
We do it together, but our intentions are pure. We're humble, and it's for the greater good of our household. And we know that this season is nothing but glory for God. Nothing but glory for God. It ain't fun. It's hard work, but it's glory for God, and it's only temporary.
mm.
And the beauty of it is that even in this season of trusting God, Lawrence, like when I tell you, we ain't missed a beat. We got options, a whole lot of good options. My husband came home the other day with a new car for me, a car that I wanted. And I'm that chick, I don't like bills. So I will drive a car till the wheels fall off and one of the doors are hanging off. Because I don't like, you know what I'm saying? I don't like car notes. That's just me.
Mhm.
But I was like, you know what? Girl, don't be driving around here looking like this. And my husband was like, D, it's about that time. My husband came home with a car that I wanted. It's not about the material things,
Mm,
but it's what God has allowed us to even have, even in this season.
mm,
And have not, again, it's not about the material, but what He's allowing. He's keeping us. He has been keeping us, and He has given us His strength. It's not by my strength, it is His strength. Because if it were by my strength, baby, I would have been gone a long time ago. Okay. That would have been it. So, yeah.
fam, this is so rich. Like, I
Mhm.
mean that in the highest sense of.
Don't be telling all your guests this now. Don't be trying to like run no guest game on me now.
Nah, 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 nah,
Listen,
nah, 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 nah. I have used. I be clear. I have used the word rich, but I've not defined it in this way. I just. This is just.
I'm just teasing
Yeah,
you.
no, I know. You my sister. Like I said, we're related. But this is just. I just don't want to feel. I don't want to feel in that. I just want to. I want that to breathe. Because I think that's just so. I think people need to hear that, especially this year, after the past 12 months, or the past 18 months,
Mm,
where people's worlds have been turned
yeah,
upside down. This is evergreen, of course, but I think that no matter what season of life,
yeah,
you're upside down, may be more macro, or it may be related to your family, it may be related to your career, upside down, and trusting in this season that God will keep you. If your mind is
yeah,
towards that, and even in spite of you, the God keeping you. Um,
yeah,
I have to get to this because I think when someone's hearing this, there's a curiosity that this brings up for me, and I think there's the curiosity around one, your rhythm with God, but we'll get to that when we close. Like your rhythm with God, what is an idea of rhythm? But then, but I would actually, before I even touch on that, how does your lens towards God, now you kind of reframed how your identity shift, your prioritization shift because of understanding who you are in Christ. But then even tactically to how you tell stories, you have Morning Cup of Style, you have all your Home with D. How does just your faith inform even your stylistic preferences, the things that you want to do? Oh, we're going to credit people on this. We go like, how does it get down to the detail of how you do what you do in your work?
that's a good question. um, Number one, being intentional,
Mm,
even in my captions. Um, Intentional about being authentic and connecting with my audience. Being intentional about telling a story. Everybody has a story, which is why I'm so passionate about the At Home with D franchise. Um, I would say also creating, um, I would say like a rhythm, my work rhythm, because I'm essentially doing everything from home, doing it and doing it well, but still making sure that my babies get their time. I'm hanging out with my mom, hanging out with my husband, which he's first, but making sure that those needs are met organically. and just really, you know, intentions mean a lot. It's something that faith draws me to that. And then it's something I also learned from being a part of the Oprah Mag, which is now Oprah Daily, being a part of their team. But having good intentions means so much. And so for me, I'm like, I can speak that in my message, whether it's the picture I post of myself, how I post it, what I say, how I engage with the people, because you got to have that engagement on social media. I try to always engage in a happy and positive light while still being honest and authentic, because I'm not going to agree with every design opinion that people have, but respecting that. So I try to approach my work with the best of intentions and be creative. And however that flows, it flows. Because that's what God gave me, and that's what creativity is about. It's not planned. It just kind of happens, and then you go with it and plan from there as it's happening. And that's the beauty of being a creative. So
we said this. We said the greatest creative of all time is God. I don't,
listen,
the humility game, she gave us colors and levels of this, but I have to say this, y'all, Home with Dee, right? Home with Dee is something else. It's something else. I know we season 2 in it. It's something else because of, it's so much, I can't say it's packed because it feels so appropriate for what you're sharing. The Muted Home, that was one of my favorites, and I'm just like, I'm seeing us. I'm seeing the vibes. I'm seeing the kitchen. And I went to their page and I'm like, okay, let's look at this kitchen makeover. Got the range, got the blue. And then but how you pack the story, it makes sense, right? Because it's like, there's a theme for me when I see your work of style and story and intention. And I'm like, how did she fit all this in 3 minutes? 3 minutes and 7 seconds, right? Like, I'm like, how did she do this? But it seemed like it was quality, not seems, it is quality. And there's a saying they talk about, Jesus as the carpenter. He's just like, Jesus as the carpenter never built a crooked leg. Right. And so, as I'm seeing this, I'm just like, look at excellence. Look at God, look at godly excellence in that. And so I have to do it, at least ask you this even around Home with Dee and just the story, packing it in within that amount of time. Is that by, it seems bad even me asking, is it by design? Clearly it's by design, but what has gone into that in these capsules? Is that where it's going to stay?
it is honestly, like, everybody's different. But I don't like trying to pay attention and watch videos and do, like, I'm a multitasker. So I'm usually looking for quick snackable videos, right? And that's kind of essentially the type of content that I like to create for Morning Cup of Style and At Home with Dee. And I like to create snackable content that what do you do with a snack? It's quick and it hits the spot, right? When you have a bigger meal, your entree, you got to sit down, right? You got to get some room and some space. Take you a little bit longer to eat it and takes a little bit more longer to digest, right? But with something that's snackable, is quick, is satisfying, and is to the point. And that's essentially what I try to do with the content on my page, because I feel like we're in this microwave society, right? And I want to inspire people, but I want to quickly do it. So I'm intentional about I usually try to do 3 minutes or less. Sometimes it goes to the 307, and like the one with my dad, it was like 4 minutes. But I'm very intentional about that because, there are moms watching, there are career people watching, there are different sorts of people watching. Why not? And that's what I always say in my caption, or if I'm promoting it in my stories, I'm like, if you got 3 minutes of your life, just watch this. It won't take long. You can literally watch it while you go into the bathroom, washing your hands. If you got an AirPod in. Don't hold your phone and use the bathroom and try to watch At Home with Dee at the same time. But
Yo,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, this is what is an ideal rhythm? What is your ideal rhythm with God? If someone cleared your schedule, let's assume all the things in order. Connected with your husband, kids taken care of, all that. But you just had the day to connect with God. What would be your ideal rhythm?
Upon waking up, so and I'm going to try to answer this as tight as possible. So, one of the things that God has been doing to me and for me over the last, I would say, like maybe 6 months, He's been ministering to me through music. So, I'll wake up and sometimes like when you hear a song once and it's stuck in your head and you can't get it out of your head, I'll wake up with songs that I've never even heard before. And the lyrics are stuck in my head. And I have to go and Google the words to figure out what gospel song is this, just to go to YouTube to type in the title to see if it matches with what I woke up with. And that's how you know it's God, right? Never even heard the song, but the words are on my heart. So I'm in this space to where if I don't wake up with a song or a scripture, I wake up and I'm like, God, I'm coming to you first. I'm happy, right? And I ask him, I'm like, God, speak to me. Like, I want to hear from you, whether it's through encouragement from a friend, through your word, through music, through song. And so there's a part of me now that I get excited when I wake up. So I wake up with this excitement and I want to get my day started with God. And that looks like praying, simply praying. And not always talking, but trying to listen. I'm working on getting better with that, and getting and matching it with His Word, Scripture. I'm always doing Bible studies. I'm always reading Word. And if I have enough time, if I hadn't pressed the snooze button a couple of times, I will then start personally reaching out to at least one or two people just to encourage them before the day started. Or if it's someone I prayed with, I'm like, I just prayed for you. Nice. And saying that to somebody is so different than, oh, girl, I'm going to pray for you. Oh, girl, I'm going to pray for you. Oh, boy, I'm going to pray for you. Brother, I'm going to pray for you. Sister, I'm going to pray. But when you send somebody a message that says, I just prayed for you, be encouraged. I just prayed for you. I love you. Or I'm thinking about you. Or whatever. That, I feel like that's a part of what the body is supposed to do. We're supposed to draw from each other, encourage each other, and things like that. So I get my day started and I circle back to God throughout the day. I'm at a point, Lawrence, to where I can't say, okay, at 9:00 I pray this, at noon I go and read that. And then, at 6:00 before, I just look for ways for God, to find God throughout my day. And so one of the things I've been praying that I was actually encouraged by, very close family friend, but I call him my uncle Terry. He's married to one of my mother's really good friends, Linda. And she's my auntie Linda, but he encouraged me to start seeking the Holy Spirit and how to move throughout my day. Like seeking the Spirit in planning my day, seeking the Spirit in leading me, whether it's making a decision or if I'm feeling overwhelmed, how do I need to unpack my day? How do I organize my day and all that? I used to make all these lists the day before. I don't even do it anymore. I will make a list the day of, right? And I'm constantly seeking the Spirit. Like when I get overwhelmed, I say, God, I need you to step in and to show me what is the best way that you feel that I should navigate through this task. Because me doing it by my own might, I'm getting anxious and I don't feel right or I'm overwhelmed. You guide me and I'm going to sit down for a second, have some water, chill with my daughter and regroup and come back and try to do it again. And I've been noticing, and that's why I said, I'm pulling from God through the day. And what's crazy, He wants us to do that. And I had been in this Christian space where I was living my life but making God a part of it. And I think that God wants us, right, to live in Him and make our day a part of Him, if that makes sense. You see what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yes.
And I was just like, He wants us to depend on Him like this. And, you hear that all the time, depend on the Lord because, He is on your side. What does that mean? And I was just like, okay, yeah, I depend on God. So when I need something, I'm going to come holler at Him and then I'm going to try to navigate the best way that I can, in the meantime. And He's been good. He's been faithful. And He's been real faithful through my tribe. So that's a part of Him that I pull from. I need accountability. I go to God, but I know God have very, very special women in my life that He has placed, that He is using. And it has been nothing short of a blessing. Prayer, laughter, Don't get so serious about the Lord that you forget about the laugh. You know what I mean? He's giving us that emotion. And I'm talking about belly laughs, and just again, just finding ways to draw from him. And, I love my shows. I have my little shows that I watch, my guilty
Your
pleasures and stuff. But
housewives,
there
your
are times
housewives.
where I'm like, you know what? I had to break away from that. I watched this show called honey, don't get me started. I won't even name the franchise. I'm sure that you know which one it is. But man, oh man, I had to go and break away. I had to break away. But I will say the show that I'm into now is called A Million Little Things. I really like that show. But there are even some nights where I'm like, I just want more God. What does that look like? And it's not even let me get my shine on and impress him and impress the people around me because I'm so full of the Lord. Nah, boo, it's here. It's in my heart. And so I hope I answered your question, but I start off my day on the right note, but I'm pulling through him. I'm pulling from him throughout my entire day.
God spoke through you. He answered the question. Sis, we this has been such a great conversation. And as you and I spoke, we don't do transactional. We family. And I just think on behalf of brothers and sisters who hear this and see this, I just thank you for your life. I really thank you for just the model of your marriage, your vision, how you steward the paradox in this world. It's a paradox of being able to work hard, honor the God-given ambition, not selfish ambition, but God-given ambition that God has given you, but for it had to have its place and for it to be channeled in ways that benefit others. We're the beneficiaries of it as we see your work, as we hear your voice, as we hear your words and wisdom, as we watch your marriage, as we see you navigate, stumble, humbly share about it. All these things, I think, as we talked about, you need to be encouraged because we know, and I know that you're an encourager to the world, your world that God has given you your lot, but the world at large. And so I thank you. And so how could people find you? I know where to find you online, but how do people find you? And
I need
what
to
do you
find
have
you. How about that?
Yeah, man. How about that? Yeah, man. How do people support what you got coming up? What's coming up, and how do they find you online?
So you can always find me, preferably on Instagram at Morning Cup of Style. I'm not going anywhere. I am there. If you need to figure out how to link to my YouTube, you name it, or my website, I am right there. We post every single day, and we even do giveaways. I give away furniture. What? Who does that? So I'm giving away stuff constantly. So that's where people can find me. What we have coming up, there's one project that we're working on. We're actually working to successfully bring all sources together to do our first documented renovation. So that is still in the works. So fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything. We are working really hard. I'm working with a really amazing team to make that happen. Other than that, we're just breezing through. And there's something else that's potentially cooking, but I won't speak on that just yet. But I can say that we are working towards our first documented renovation. And I love renos. I love, not as in I want to do it as a business in the sense of, but I like talking about different ways and talking to the creatives and the professionals that specialize in certain areas to beautify a home. So I'm really praying that comes together. That would be really big. And that would be really big, not just for Dee Brown, but Morning Cup of Style and at home. So, and thank you for the encouragement, by the way. I really appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. It is such a great privilege and a pleasure. Something's going on in Houston. That's a whole other conversation, but I'm going to end this thing. But so there's a move of just people and around home beautification. There's just something going on there. We'll return to this, but there's something going on there, and I'm grateful that you are a part of it. Locked arms with other brothers and sisters in the faith doing such amazing stuff. Dee Brown, I love you like a brother loves you, like a kingdom brother loves you. I love your family. I love my brother.
My new relative.
Exactly. New relative, Nigeria, you know what I'm saying? But we got to do 23andMe. You got to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. But Thank you, thank you, thank you again. Look forward to our next conversation, my sister. Take care.
Absolutely. Take care.